So, hello, Sandra. Welcome along. Really glad to have you here, and I can't wait to hear more about Jules. Before we start, though, tell us more about who you are, kind of a bit of the background that led you towards this.
Yes, thank you, Scott, for having me. I'm Sandra. I'm a management consultant by experience. I spent the past 12 years in management consulting in the technology sector in Paris and in London. Last year, I was working in AI strategy and transformation in a large technology company. And more importantly, I'm a mother of three young kids. They are 3, 5, and 7. And that's the reason why I decided to build Jules.
Wonderful. So, one of the things I like about what we do at the Impact Builder and the startups we work with is when you're talking about impact, there's normally a personal story that led the founders towards the thing that they're doing. So, I'd love to know what that personal story is for you. How did you decide this is what you wanted to do?
Of course. So, like a lot of parents, I don't like screens. I don't have a TV at home. My first kid didn't see a screen before the age of 3. And then I had another one and another one. And I realized that parents are not using screens because they are lazy or they don't love their kids. They're using screens because they are stuck and they would prefer an alternative if it was available. And myself, I started using screens on the weekend because I had to sleep, for instance. I felt like with AI voice to voice technology, we had this opportunity to create a really engaging, magical experience for kids while keeping them away from screens. Something I do a lot with my kids is to ask them, like, shall I tell you a story? What kind of story do you want today? And they love being able to ask whatever they want at that moment of time. It can be a water bottle and a pancake or whatever. And I create a story for them and I ask them questions and I will always do that. But I thought that it was a great entertainment for when I'm not available, basically.
Hmm. I totally understand and resonate with the point of having the kids kind of stuck to the screens, the use that it has, but also the damage that it can cause as well. Um, so I'm really interested in this and wish it was around when my children were younger. But tell me, how did you get to this point? What drove you to the device you have right now, and some of a journey to get there?
It's been a very iterative process. So first of all, the company is quite new. We started last September. The first thing, I mean, I had the ID before, but voice-to-voice technology was very expensive, and um, AI for kids at that moment of time, I felt like we were not ready for that. So when I took the decision to start Jules, for me, the idea of AI for kids was inevitable at this stage, and I wanted to be one of the first ones to show that we could build something really responsible with their well-being in mind. And to answer your question, we've started with very basic proof of concept. We put ChatGPT on the phone, hidden in a teddy bear. And I was in another room. I called the phone and I wanted to check that the voice to voice interaction screenless for kids was appealing to them and they loved it and they asked me every day, when is it going to be available. So we started like that, then bought a Raspberry Pi microphone, a speaker, and put it in a wooden box. Then I invested the first prototype, and basically this is generation 4 and we are going to mass manufacturing at the moment.
No, well done. 4 generations in a year. That's hard work. Um, but yeah, let's talk about the device itself right now at the moment. It's eye catching. It's very simple, but there's got to be a lot of design reasons around why it looks like it does.
Yeah. Yeah, initially I thought we could have the idea ourselves. So me and my husband was also uh, really part of the adventure and our kids. But I couldn't decide whether it should look like a box or a teddy bear, a fluffy, and so I started looking at design agencies. I interviewed some in New York, in Europe, and they were all very, very expensive. So I looked at freelancer on Malt.com, Fiverr, Behance, and I found Adam Miklosi, who's an industrial designer who, in my view, a genius. He's never worked on toys before, anything for kids, but I just felt like he had a lot of taste and he would create something great. And I've been working with him for 6 weeks over the Christmas period and in November last year. And it started by a lot of research around faceless dolls and what kids like, what fostered their imagination. And during that process, we went from 25 sketches to 3 options to Jules, basically.
Mm. And I think how you've ended up with just the simplicity of just the two eyes
Yeah.
that creates, I guess, so much opportunity for imagination, yet gives that personality to it, personifies the device.
Yeah.
That's quite clever. Have you got, tell me more about the thoughts around that.
Yes, of course. So we want Jules to be a kind of canvas that stimulates creativity and imagination. So the experience is completely active versus watching a screen or even listening to a story. And we wanted that to be part of the voice-to-voice experience, but also the hardware. And that's why we want to invite kids to draw on Jules, to add a mouth, a mustache, a nose, and as much as they want. So they will be able to do that with special pens. But also we are building a series of accessories. At the moment, we are building a knight, an astronaut, a crown, a cap. But we'll continue building accessories for kids to keep engaging with Jules over time. A bit like Mr. Potato, but even more possibilities.
Mm. So tell me more about how a child might use this and how it interacts with not just them, but maybe, schools and other kind of aspects of their life too.
Of course. So for the child, it's a complete screenless experience. They press the button on, and then Jules starts speaking. Hey, I'm Jules. What kind of story do you want today? They can ask whenever they want, and they can create the story with Jules. But also, Jules will propose riddles and jokes and games. So, for instance, I spy something beginning with girl if they are learning about phonics, for instance. So that's the experience for the kids, but also, thinking about Jules, we thought that we could make it also a playful learning device. So the model is trained on the UK school curriculum, which will adapt depending on the country we enter. And this way, if a 7-year-old in year 2 asks a story about a king, Jules might say, oh, do you remember King James I and Bonfire Night? Well, do you know what's happening next? Or it can help a 4-year-old learn about the planet and how to count down in Spanish, for instance.
Oh, wonderful. And I'm picking up the idea here as well that it can help with children learning different languages. I'm guessing the parents can select kind of what languages they would like the kids to learn and things like that.
Yes, exactly. So as you know, with AI, we have this possibility to translate in multiple languages. Some LLMs speak 80 languages, some 29. So with our prototypes, it's already speaking all these languages and so on. For the product that we are launching in March, April next year, we might release the language one by one because we are adding a safety layer on top of the model. And we want to make sure that this safety layer applies to each language. That's why I'm not communicating too much about this feature, but potentially in 6 months, 8 months, 9 months, it will speak 10 languages already.
Yeah. And I'd like to get onto safety in a minute. Yeah. But before we do that, we've talked about the experience for the children.
Yeah.
I'm guessing there's other stakeholders involved as well, at least the parents. So
of course.
What's the experience for the parents?
Yes. So we are building, obviously, Jules for kids, but we are building it for parents. We are parents ourselves, and we are building the toys that we'd love to use in our family. And for the parents, we thought we want them to be in control of data privacy, of the time their kids spend with Jules. We want them to have access to the history of conversation if they want. But more importantly, we want them to be able to personalize the experience for their kids. For instance, my kid is 7-year-old in year 2, bilingual, learning Spanish, struggling in mathematics. So this is a type of personalization we want to offer to the parents. And for that, they have an app that they can download, and they can also use the app to pair Jules with their local Wi-Fi.
So even how you apply to that as well, there's an element of safety there. So I'd love to know, AI is in the news for all sorts of reasons, one of them being safety.
Yeah.
So tell us more about kind of what your approach is to safety for children.
Of course. So first of all, about AI, personally, I'm an optimist, but I think that obviously it's like electricity. It's here, it's not going away. My view was, if my kids are going to use AI, because we already know that 30% of kids today are using AI every day, like Alexa, ChatGPT. I wanted them to have an alternative which is responsible, because we know that this number is going to increase. And for me, responsible means a lot of things. First of all, it means that we are selecting the best model for them. In addition to that, we are building Jules for kids from the ground up. So our prompt is already saying to Jules that it's speaking to kids this age, that it shouldn't be their best friend or acting like a best friend. And it's also protecting creators and families. On top of that, we have an extra safety layer on top of the model, which filters input and output, which means what Jules is saying to the kid and what the kid is saying to Jules, to make sure there are no hallucination and everything is age appropriate. And on top of that, we have the parent app, where parents are in control of data privacy, time, and so on.
And also kind of related to safety is maybe a question around brand safety.
Yep.
So if a child asks for, I don't know, a story around the Jungle Book, how do you deal with that? And are you seeking out collaborations with brands as well?
Very good question. And actually, this is a gray zone, in AI these days. So for instance, if I had just LLM into Jules and I was just asking, can you tell me the story of The Lion King or Peppa Pig? It would tell me, of course, I love Simba and Nala, Peppa and George. Shall we create a story about their running in the savannah and so on? So it wouldn't be allowed to tell me exactly the same stories, but it would be allowed to use this existing character to create a story in their context. At Jules Stories, we want to be best in class in terms of responsible AI, so we are not doing that. If you ask Jules a story about Peppa Pig, it's going to say, oh, it's a really funny character. I didn't create this character, so we should protect their creators. But if you want, I can tell you a story about a funny pig. And yes, of course, I'd love to do collaboration with this type of brand, and have costumes tailored to Peppa Pig or Lion King, so that and have some hybrid licensing partnerships with these companies.
Yeah, wonderful. So can I buy one of these right now? Where will I be able to buy one? And kind of that leads to the question, kind of what is traction looking like right now? How have you got to market?
Of course. So we've developed the startup in a very iterative way. And we've tried from the beginning to make sure that there was a product market fit and get people's feedback into account. That's why we've launched pre-orders already in June, when the product was really not ready, but we wanted to share the idea with people and see if it would resonate. So since June, you can pre-order Jules for a discount. And that not only helps us showing traction to investors, but it helps fund the company. It's a bit like crowdfunding, and we explain it very clearly on the website. If you prefer to wait for Jules to be mass manufactured, which is a process that has started already, you can wait for later in 2026, around March, April. And in terms of traction, so we have pre-orders. We've been quite overwhelmed by the response. To be honest, we already have 5 customers who bought 2 Jules for their 2 kids, which is something we didn't expect. But we also have a partnership with a mathematics museum opening in November. We'll have a human-sized Jules that kids can customize, and they will be able to speak with Jules in the museum. And we are working on partnership with schools, with brick and mortar retailers in the UK and abroad.
So there's going to be a life-size Jules. Where is that? A museum, you said?
It's a child size, so not adult size. It's going to be in Blackfire. The museum opens in November. The Jules exhibit might launch a bit later in beginning of 2026. It's not the human-sized Jules will not speak, because we just didn't have the time to do that. But kids will be able to customize it with accessories, and they will be able to speak to mini Jules, which will be next to the big one.
Wonderful. I can't wait. I will go and see that. And so rolling the clock forward now, You've made tremendous progress so far. You've got some really exciting pre-order traction. And what does it look like in 5 years? And what do you need to happen to get to your vision?
Thank you. Good question. So a lot of things can happen in 5 years. Our plan is to foster our presence in the UK market in 2026. That means, shipping Jules to our first customers, opening partnership with brick and mortar stores, museums, schools, and so on. But from 2027 onwards, we want to enter new countries as well, starting by France, Benelux in Europe, but also the US quite quickly as well. And then new markets, Australia, Japan, like basically, and it could be a product for anywhere in the world. In the meantime, what I'd love for Jules is to focus on where it can have the biggest impact. I think that it can be much more than a toy and a movement for responsible use of AI for kids. It can be a way to make education more accessible to all after school. I'm thinking about kids in hospital, kids in country where they have one teacher for 80 kids, for instance. And that's where I'd love to be in 5 years.
That's great, because that reminds me of a question I nearly forgot to ask, and that is about digital inclusivity and the shared use of Jules. So that's definitely something that you're looking to address.
What do you mean by digital inclusivity?
So, like you said earlier on, people who might not have access to the technology themselves.
Yeah.
So maybe at school, in hospitals, in shared places.
Yeah, exactly. We'd love to even gift them to hospital and schools at some point. I feel like AI can do a lot of amazing things for the world. And it's just about how to use it and using it for the right thing and so on. But in terms of personalized learning, we've never had this opportunity before to have a tool that adapts to the kids' needs. Kids with neurodiversity, for instance, but also I have 3 kids, all of them learn in a different way. So having this kind of tool can really make a difference for education, I think.
Brilliant. And now for the surprise question. Before we finish an interview like this, I always like to ask, is there a question that you wish I had asked so you could answer something that I've missed?
Thank you. There's a point we didn't speak too much about, which is kind of ethical guardrails around Jules. So I loved your question about, how we protect creators and copyright and so on. There's something we've decided as well, which seems quite obvious, but we don't want Jules to become the kid's best friend or to replace human connection. And it sounds obvious, but today you have AI toys in the market that pretend to love kids and be their best friend, and potentially kids love that, but they are too young to make a real difference. And I don't think that they would make the same effort building real relationship with human if we have toys saying that to them. So we've made it very clear that Jules would say himself to the kid that it's a machine, it cannot feel. So if a kid say, "Oh, I'm feeling lonely today, I had a fight with my best friend," it's going to say, "I cannot feel, I'm a machine, but you should speak to your parents about it. If you want, I can change your mind with a story." And for us, it's part of educating kids about AI as well.
The effort that you're going into to make it sure it's safe and ethical and doesn't fall into the traps that other AI tools do. As a startup, you've got to be very careful where you put your effort. It sounds like that's a real important thing for you, and maybe that's around some of your differentiation, some of your defensibility. Would you like to talk about that?
Yeah, well, first of all, before being a startup founder, I'm a mother. I've got 3 kids. I want them to be proud of what I do. And I think it's a huge responsibility to build something like Jules. So our positioning is very firm and will not change. Like, we want to build one of the first responsible device for kids. But in terms of defensibility as well, first of all, hardware is defensible. Historically, investors didn't like hardware because it comes with logistic, it takes time to develop. But in a way, it's defensible by itself because it's hard to develop, it takes time. And it's not that hard actually when you have the right partners. Whereas apps these days, can be quite quickly disrupted by AI, LLMs. But also we are defensible with our design, with our brand, our positioning, and the kind of partnership we are putting in place at the moment.
Brilliant. So with that, I'd just like to say thank you once again for coming to join us. Thank you for being part of the Impact Builder program.
Thank you.
Sandra, thank you.
Thank you. I'm really proud to be part of the program.